Why Britain's future still and will always lie with America. When Britain left the European Union, many people asked a simple question: why would Britain walk away from its largest nearby market? But that question misses a much bigger historical pattern, because for over 300 years, whenever Britain faced a choice between looking inward towards Europe or outward towards the wider English speaking world, Britain would choose the Atlantic. It chose trade over geography. It chose maritime power over continental politics. It chose its colonies, its former colonies, and once formed in the 1790s, the United States. And today, Britain may be making that choice once again, or will have to. You see, Britain was never really a European power. I mean, sure, Britain sits off the coast of Europe, but throughout its history, it rarely behaved like a typical European power. France, Germany, Austria, they looked inward toward the continent and controlling the continent of Europe. Britain looked outward. The British Empire became the largest empire in human history, not because it dominated Europe, but because it dominated the oceans. On a side note, this is also a major driver of contemporary American power. And this is something that the British have always understood, because this is how they drove their power. By the early 20th century, Britain controlled nearly a quarter of the world's land surface and population. Its wealth came from global trade routes stretching through North America, Australia, New Zealand, India, the Caribbean. Britain's prosperity depended on maritime commerce, not European integration, and that strategic culture never disappeared. The American Revolution, you see, didn't end the relationship, it strengthened it. Many people assume that the American Revolution permanently severed Britain and America, but actually what happened was quite the opposite. Yes, Britain lost its colonies, but by the late 19th century, Britain made one of the most important strategic decisions in its history. Instead of treating the rising United States as a rival to be crushed, Britain chose to treat her as a partner to be contained. Historians call this the Great Rapprochement. By the early 20th century, London recognized a simple reality. America was becoming the dominant English-speaking power. Not a peer dominant. Rather than resist that transition, Britain embraced it. Even more, it wielded it. That decision may have been the most successful geopolitical investment Britain has ever made. And the 20th century proved Britain right. When Germany threatened Europe in the First World War, Britain and America found themselves on the same side. When Nazi Germany threatened Britain's survival in the Second World War, America became Britain's lifeline. The United States supplied Britain through the Lend-Lease Act long before American troops landed in Europe. And in fact, America made sure to liberate Britain before even taking care of all its territories, such as the Philippines. Without American industrial power, Britain's ability to continue the war, let alone would it, would have been severely constrained. After 1945, Britain doubled down on the relationship. Britain understood that its greatest asset was no longer its empire, but its relationship with the United States and its ability to have America's ear. On another side note, this is a main reason why Britain decided to go into many of the wars that they were dragged into by the United States, to maintain that place on America's side, to have their ear and access to their power. Together, Britain and America built much of the modern Western order. They helped create NATO. They developed nuclear cooperation. They built the Five Eyes. They coordinated military strategy throughout the Cold War. The two major powers have shared intelligence, technology, and military cooperation on this scale for such a long time, and this was something that 100 years prior would have been seen as impossible. The so-called special relationship is not a slogan. It is one of the most successful strategic partnerships in modern history that has lasted for 200 years, arguably, and still continues today. The United States is already Britain's largest single-country trading partner. In 2025, UK-US trade exceeded £330 billion. America is one of the largest investors in Britain. British firms are among the largest investors in America. But the most important point isn't trade or investment, it's technology. The industries likely to dominate the next 50 years are artificial intelligence, advanced computing, aerospace, defense technology in a world in which NATO is decreasing its ability to exist, biotechnology, financial innovation. The United States leads the world in almost every one of these sectors, and Britain's strongest industries happen to align perfectly with them. The economic center of gravity for Britain's future increasingly lies across the Atlantic, and Britain knows this. Britain is already moving toward America. The UK-US economy prosperity deal signed in 2025, while not perfect, expanded cooperation in trade, digital commerce, supply chains, and strategic industries. Britain and America also continue to deepen cooperation through various other institutions such as NATO, AUKUS, and Five Eyes, amongst others. In fact, one of the arguments made for Brexit was that the United Kingdom would find itself relying more on its Anglosphere, such as Canada, Australia, and even the United States. Meanwhile, even politicians who favor better relations with Europe have largely stopped arguing for rejoining the European Union. That political debate has shifted. The question is no longer whether Brexit should be reversed or not. The question is how Britain should use its newfound independence. Two of Britain's parties, Reform UK and Restore Britain, understand this and are promoting this idea. Increasingly, and based on history, the answer points towards Washington. In conclusion, Europe will always be Britain's neighbor, but America has become Britain's strategic partner. For 3 centuries, Britain's greatest successes came when it looked outward across the oceans rather than inward toward the continent. First came the Empire, then came the Commonwealth, then came the special relationship. The names changed, but the logic never did. Britain's story has always been the story of an Atlantic power. And in an age defined by artificial intelligence, great power competition, and global security challenges, Britain's most important relationship remains the same one it has relied upon for more than a century. Not the one across the English Channel, not the one across the Atlantic, the one with its former 13 colonies. Because when Britain has had to choose the direction of its future, contemporary history suggests it usually follows the same compass: America.